A modern military is this vast, incredibly complex machine, and its biggest vulnerabilities are often in that soft underbelly.
The repair bays.
The repair base, the quality control, just the simple availability of a specific bolt or a seal. When that infrastructure starts to buckle, the whole system erodes from the inside out.
And that brings us perfectly to the focus of this deep dive. We've gone through a stack of sources detailing one specific and truly tragic incident that acts as a perfect window into this very problem.
A case study, really.
A perfect case study. It's the crash of a heavy transporter aircraft deep inside Russia. And our mission today is to go way beyond the headlines. We want to analyze the details, the timing, the context, the specific plane, and then, zoom out.
To see what it tells us about the bigger picture.
Yes, the broader implications for Russian aviation readiness, especially with everything going on with global sanctions.
It's a rare and very clear data point. It lets us measure that often invisible, non-kinetic damage that's caused by resource scarcity and economic pressure.
Okay, so let's get into the specifics. The incident happened in the Ivanovo district. That's quite a ways north of Moscow.
Right, and the aircraft was a Russian An-22 heavy transporter. It came down, and the reports say it crashed into a reservoir.
And the immediate outcome was it was devastating. All 7 crew members on board were lost.
And you have to start there. Before we talk about any of the technical details, you have to acknowledge the profound human cost.
Of course. These aren't just numbers. They were experienced pilots, navigators, flight engineers, people who are incredibly difficult to replace.
It really highlights that the stakes in these maintenance decisions aren't just about equipment. They're fundamentally about people's lives. The loss of 7 experienced airmen. It just underlines the gravity of the failures we're about to talk about.
Okay, let's unpack this then, because, plane crashes happen. But the details around this one and what it says about the health of the legacy fleet, that's where it gets really interesting.
And the first detail is the most jarring one from our sources.
This wasn't an operational flight?
No, it was a test flight. It happened shortly after the aircraft had just come out of what was designated as routine maintenance.
At the 308 aircraft repair plant, right?
That's the one. It's a key hub for them, for deep structural overhaul work.
Yeah, so the plane was supposed to be at its safest. It had just been worked on by specialist technicians.
Exactly. So you invest all this scarce time, money, skilled labor, all precious things right now to bring this old airframe back.
It takes off, performs a basic maneuver, and it falls out of the sky.
The crew, during that initial turn after takeoff, they reported a malfunction of a failure of one of the aircraft systems.
And that was it.
That was it. Radio contact just ceased right after that call, and the aircraft plummeted. No recovery.
What's so fascinating there is how fast it happened.
Right. It wasn't a slow degradation. It was an immediate catastrophic breakdown right after that repair.
So what does that suggest? I mean, given the phase of flight, that initial climb and turn.
It suggests the failure was in something absolutely critical, a flight control linkage, maybe an essential hydraulic system, or a major power unit that just suddenly failed to respond.
Okay, but I have to ask the critical question here, because accidents do happen even to the best maintained fleets in the world.
Sure.
Couldn't this just be a horrific one-off mistake, one technician at the 308 plant having a bad day? Is the evidence really strong enough to link this specific crash to a systemic wartime problem?
That's a fair point. And of course, a single human error is always possible. But the weight of the evidence, the context, it all points toward a systemic pressure.
How so?
Well, you have a dedicated state-level repair facility, like the 308 plant. When they sign off on an aircraft that fails its very first critical maneuver, it suggests one of two things.
Okay.
Either they're under immense pressure to get the work done without the proper checks, or, and I think this is more likely, they simply lack the certified functional parts to do the job right in the first place. You're forced to cut corners.
That idea of compromise,
Yeah.
of being forced to trade safety for speed or just availability?
Exactly. And that's the thread we need to pull on. But before we get deeper into sanctions, let's talk about the plane itself, because the identity of this aircraft is central to understanding the sheer size of this logistical loss.
We're talking about the Antonov An-22.
The An-22.
Yeah.
NATO codename Cock. And yes, it's a memorable name for a plane, but what's really important is its history, its capability.
It's a true Cold War relic, a gigantic turboprop transport plane from the 1960s.
For a while, it was the largest turboprop-powered aircraft in the world. A monstrous plane.
And it was built for a very specific job.
A very specific job. Hauling heavy, oversized strategic cargo Things like missile components, massive radar systems, heavy armor, things that just wouldn't fit in their workhorse plane, the IL-76.
It could also land on rough, unimproved airfields. That gave it a unique kind of flexibility that's very hard to replace.
And this is where our sources deliver the real aha moment, the status of the rest of the fleet.
Right. The loss of this single aircraft effectively makes the An-22 extinct from active Russian service.
It's a staggering logistical casualty. Before the crash, Russia technically had 11 of these airframes in their inventory.
But the key word there is technically.
Exactly. None of them were actually in active flying service. They were parked, mothballed, in various states of disrepair.
And this specific An-22, the one that crashed?
That was the one. It was the only airframe they were actively trying to bring back to operational status. It was their one single hope of restoring the type to the fleet.
So if they were putting all those scarce resources, the skilled people at the 308 plant, scavenged parts, fuel into this one plane, you have to assume it was the best of the bunch, right?
You'd have to. Or at least the one with the most potential.
So what does it say about the integrity of even their best remaining assets from that era?
It says that even their best assets are fundamentally fragile. It says that reviving this 1960s technology is right now almost insurmountable for them. The implication is powerful.
They spent 7 lives and a ton of resources just to prove it couldn't be done.
Pretty much. You can't justify trying to fix the other 10 when your absolute best attempt failed so catastrophically on its very first trip out of the hangar.
It's a hard reckoning both financially and technically. The attempt to save the type failed, and one crash wipes an entire unique heavy-lift platform from your active inventory.
In the middle of a major conflict.
Yeah. That is a quiet but very significant strategic blow.
Which brings us to the broader so what. The immediate cause was a system failure after maintenance. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's not just possible. It's very likely that global sanctions played a direct and massive role.
So when you say sanctions impact maintenance, what are we talking about specifically? What part would be missing from an An-22 that would cause it to crash like this?
We're talking about critical components, things that are extremely difficult to, reverse engineer or build from scratch, especially for a plane designed decades ago with Soviet-era manufacturing standards.
Like what?
Well, the An-22 is powered by 4 Kuznetsov NK-12MA turboprops. These are incredibly powerful, complex engines. To keep them running safely, you need high-precision seals, specific metal alloys, specialized hydraulic pumps, actuators.
And crucially, these parts have to be certified.
They have to be. If you put in, say, a hydraulic valve seal that isn't manufactured to the exact original specification because you can't get the certified Western part anymore, you're introducing an immediate point of failure.
And this is where cannibalization comes in.
Exactly. The technicians at the 308 plant are forced to do this. They'll take a large component, like a landing gear mechanism or a flight actuator, off one of the non-flying planes and install it on the one they're trying to fix.
But you have no idea what the real history of that part is.
None. You don't know the fatigue, the true service life left on that scavenged part. You're basically just hoping it works. The risk profile just skyrockets.
You're trading asset readiness for operational risk? That sounds like a terrifying equation for any crew member.
It is. The inability to legally and easily source these certified parts is the critical factor. Even if they try to get them through gray market routes, the origin is uncertain and the cost would be astronomical.
And you can't just 3D print a new landing gear strut for a 60-year-old plane.
Not at all. You need the high-end materials, the specific calibration equipment. Everything has to talk to everything else correctly.
And this structural erosion of their capability, it's starting to show up in the data, isn't it?
It is. The analyses we've reviewed point to a general trend. There's been a noticeable increase in Russian aviation accidents across the board during the war, both military and civilian.
So this isn't an isolated incident.
It suggests the maintenance issue is becoming a deeply systemic problem for their whole fleet. The An-22 crash is just the most dramatic and strategically costly example of that technical stress.
So for you listening, the key takeaway here is pretty stark. This single crash, it's acting as a profound, observable proxy for the long-term, non-kinetic effects of sanctions.
Right. It's the slow squeeze of resource denial. It degrades confidence in the equipment, it stresses the aircraft that are still flying, and it forces these irreversible decisions about retiring whole fleets.
The An-22 didn't fall to a missile.
It fell to an unreliable repair job, which was compounded by technical deprivation. It's an insidious kind of failure because it's constant, it's cumulative, and it's incredibly difficult to fix without a massive infusion of certified global parts,
They just cannot access.
which they can't access.
So let's bring it all together. What does this all mean for the big picture? We've covered the immediate tragedy, the loss of 7 irreplaceable crew members. We've detailed the failure, a catastrophic malfunction right after maintenance at the 308 plant, and we've connected that to the macro consequence, the effective extinction of the entire AN-22 fleet from active service.
The overarching takeaway is just how vulnerable you become when you depend on complex logistics. This failure highlights how that technical resource deprivation, the struggle for parts, for proper maintenance, can have consequences just as severe as direct military engagement.
A military is only as strong as its ability to keep its equipment running.
Precisely. And that leaves us with a final, provocative thought for you to mull over. We focused on the An-22, a turboprop from the 1960s. But many global air forces, including major world powers, rely heavily on these legacy fleets to maintain their reach. So, given the lesson from this crash, how long can any nation sustain high operational readiness when its main constraint isn't pilots or fuel, but functioning spare parts and the global supply chain you need to get them? This incident is a harsh demonstration of how economics and geopolitics can render strategic military assets obsolete without ever firing a single shot.
A sobering thought on what readiness truly means. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the silent costs of logistics failure.